First of all, Kiran, massive congratulations on Lapata Ladies, Lost Ladies being the India's official entry to the Oscar. So my first question for you is, what was your initial reaction to the news that when you received the news of this amazing news?
Yeah, well, initial reaction was disbelief, but it soon followed by a lot of excitement, a lot of delight, and then soon followed by a sense of bewilderment about what does one actually do when you get chosen to be India's entry. So lots of emotions, and yeah, a lot of in that sense. A learning as as we kind of got started on the process.
Amazing. Now, talking about the film, Lapata Ladies talks about a lot of things, a lot of themes, societal pressures, everything. So, how did you, as a filmmaker, strike a balance between making the film, engaging and delivering its core message without coming across as overly preachy?
Yeah, it was really important to us that we address the themes and issues that we wanted to address in a way that still was engaging and entertaining. So I think, used satire and humor to do a lot of the uh, hard work for us, because some of the themes that we touched upon are not very pleasant and not nice to kind of talk about, but they exist. And I think, done through the lens of humor and comedy, a lot of them become much more palatable and much more, in some ways, sort of make a deeper impression. So to strike that balance, actually, it was largely done by a team of incredible writers, starting with Biplab's story, and then Sneha Desai's screenplay, and then Devinidhi Sharma, who did additional dialogue and screenplay. And then, of course, using a very good screenplay, which we worked on collaboratively, uh, through performance and through the edit, to strike that balance, when we felt like some things could be more subtle, some things could be done through just a look or a gesture rather than a dialogue. So a lot of that balance came in the process of making the film.
Amazing. But the Ghungat and these arranged marriages are central to the plot, shaping the character's journey and the unfolding drama. How did you navigate portraying these traditions, authentically while addressing their impacts on the characters? And what kind of challenges did you face in balancing that cultural sensitivity with critique?
Um, yeah, I think it's a lot to do with how the film was written,
Hmm,
because Sneha has had a lot of experience writing for Indian television,
hmm,
and a lot of the soaps that she writes for, very have these very archetypal mother-in-law, daughter-in-law portrayals, and I think it was important for both of us to be able to use characters that we may have seen before, and use issues that we are all aware of, but to do them in a very fresh and subversive kind of way, to kind of take what we would otherwise, take for granted, that the ghungat is on a woman's head. But the ghungat is also a tool in this film, both to
hmm,
reveal and to conceal.
yeah.
So when a character needs it, they use the ghungat to hide,
Hmm,
and then at other times, the ghungat is a constraint, it's an impediment,
hmm,
it's the reason that the girls get switched, because they can't see.
yeah.
So there were also ways in which we could address certain issues that we feel
Hmm,
women face, but in a lighter way, in a way that made it much more fun, and kept the plot and the humor at the center of it instead of the issues.
yeah. So, but were there any deliberate symbols or visual metaphors that you incorporated to underline themes of, themes like freedom, identity, or tradition?
Um, There were, well, what was interesting was the khoicha, which is this
Yeah.
little sort of uh, a ball of rice and some grass and some, things that are given for to a girl for her husband's protection. I think that was a interesting symbol, we thought, because that was a very traditional symbol that girls are given to look after, for the protection of their husbands. But finally, in the place of the khoicha, pool ties her first earning
mm,
in the very same place,
mm,
which is a symbol actually of her freedom, of her independence, of her, understanding now of herself.
mm.
So some of these symbols were really used to underline some of the themes that we were talking about, wanted to talk about.
Great. Your character Deepak is, caught between these societal expectations and personal emotions, So, what challenges did you face portraying a male character who is vulnerable yet traditional? Secondly, in most of our Indian films or Bollywood films, we see that if it is based in a rural setting, policemen are shown in a bad light. They are corrupt or they support the bad guys. So, what was your vision while having a policeman who is exactly the opposite?
Well, I wouldn't say, sorry, starting with your second question first, I wouldn't say he's exactly the opposite, but he's a gray character.
Okay.
He's both corrupt and still has the ability to, to be empathetic, to take the side of someone he feels deserves a chance.
Hmm.
So he's not entirely painted in a white or a black brush.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important for us to see in characters, because I don't think anybody is either one or the other, and we are all flawed. And to see the potential for change in a character like Manohar, I felt was very powerful. And Deepak also was a very interesting, I thought, character for a hero, because he's not heroic in the traditional sense of the
Hmm.
word, and yet is very heroic when you think of his the strength of his personality, the strength of his
Hmm.
love, the strength of his passion and desire to make sure that Pool is okay. So both very unusual, I feel, portrayals of male characters.
Amazing. Now, one of the most key aspects of the film was, Jaya's dream of studying organic farming. It certainly highlights the importance of education and the sustainability. So, what was your inspiration? What inspired you to include this element in her story?
Uh, well, we have been working in Pani Foundation for the last 8 years. We have a non-profit that works in, first was working primarily in watershed management and now works in farming. And we've had wonderful experiences working at the village level with women's farming groups. And it was, I thought, a very important, necessary thing to actually show uh, a woman whose ambition actually is to study agriculture and farming, because women do a lot of the hard labor of farming,
Hmm.
but often don't get the chance to either study it or to actually control uh, what is planted and the kind of earnings that
Hmm.
come from that agriculture. So it was a personal desire and passion to see what is not traditionally seen as a very sexy thing to study. She could have been a doctor, or she could have been a fashion designer or something more cool. But I think agriculture and farming is very, very cool. And I thought it would be quite nice and quite unusual for her to study farming.
Amazing.
And that's organic farming.
Yeah. So, now Jaya and Phool are very different from each other, yet very similar. They have certain qualities that are very similar. But as when you were casting your actors, what qualities were you looking for in the actors, portraying Jaya and Phool to ensure that they embody the complexity of these characters?
Well, for Jaya, it was actually really hard because we wanted someone who was, you look at her and you can tell that there's a very bright mind behind those eyes. And you're interested in her and you're intrigued by her, and at the same time you're a little bit suspicious of her.
Hmm.
So, but what we wanted was a person whom you could be suspicious of but not dislike. Like she doesn't
Hmm.
feel like an antagonist.
Hmm.
Um, so that was a difficult role also for her to play, because she your heart doesn't go out to her,
Yeah.
until much later. Pool, on the other hand, your heart goes out to her the second you see her, and you
Hmm.
realize that this is a babe in the woods. She's going to, you feel worried about her. And essentially, what I wanted in her was a character who was, um, seemed vulnerable and innocent, but also had the childlike curiosity of a young person, who was able to change her mind. She was young and impressionable enough to look at this journey and have these realizations and revelations, and discover things about herself at the end of the journey. So hers is a journey much more about self discovery. So it was when those qualities needed to come through in the actors, especially Pool. It was important that you know she you kind of, by looking at her, you knew the kind of person she was, because she doesn't have that much dialogue for the
Yeah.
first
Hmm.
15 20 minutes of the film.
Hmm.
So it casting them both, also physically they needed to be roughly the same so that
Hmm.
they could be switched. It was
Yeah.
quite complex to actually balance those casting requirements.
Okay, so now my last question for you, Kiran, is, now that the film has been deemed eligible for the Oscars, so what are the next steps that are you looking for? How are you campaigning? How are you planning to take this film to the Academy voters or to the Western media or the Western audiences?
Well, we can only really have screenings of the film, that and make sure that the film is available. Of course, it's available to all Academy members on the Academy
Hmm.
screening room, which is
Hmm.
online. But we have screenings more to kind of create awareness around the title, and hope that members will come out to also hear the Q&A, and so they get an
Hmm.
insight into the process or the thought behind making it.
Hmm.
So that's about all you can really do.
Hmm.
Of course, bigger films can do a lot more marketing and publicity, like, hoardings and advertisements and things like
Hmm.
that. Um, but we are doing what we can in terms of just screenings and making sure that the film is, it's a title that people slowly get to
Hmm.
hear about.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Kiran, for giving me your time and all the very best. We are rooting for you and the film.